In this episode, we're going to talk about NgModule and how to properly use it to organize an Angular application. So, what's the purpose of an NgModule in the first place? The answer is it helps organize the complex relationship between views, such as components and directives, to data providers, such as services and guards. It works by allowing you to define all these relationships in a single file, as opposed to doing it individually in every component and service, as was the case in the early days of Angular 2. Now let's look inside an NgModule and see what these metadata terms actually mean. First, we have declarations, which is where you would put any component, directive, or pipe, and then it'll be privately available to that module. If you want it to be publicly available to other modules, then you'll need to add it to the exports section. This concept is similar to public and private functions in object-oriented programming. Components will be private by default and become public if you add them to exports. Other modules gain access to exported components by importing that module in their own metadata. So just to recap, declarations, imports, and exports define the relationship between components and how they're shared between different NgModules. Next, we have the bootstrap property, which defines a component that's used to initially load your application. By default, this will usually be the app component, which is created automatically by the Angular CLI. The final property you should be aware of is providers. This is where you register data providers such as services and guards that can be injected into components within this module. The injectable class will be available to any component in this module, as well as any module that imports it. Now let's look at some practical ways we can use NgModule to organize an application. In this example, we have all of our components and services in the root app module that was created by default. As our app grows larger, this file is going to be more and more cluttered and more hard to maintain. Our goal is to refactor most of our components and services to their own modules, with the exception of the app component, which we still want to bootstrap from the root module. Overall, this will keep the logic in our app much more organized. Now let's take a look at the routing module that was created by default by the Angular CLI. A routing module should have no declarations, it may have providers in the form of guards, and it should always export the router module. We can add our contact list component to the router, and it will load that component imperatively when the route is activated, which in this case is just the root URL. Depending on the complexity of your app, you may use multiple routing modules for better organization as well as lazy loading. Now let's build a feature module to organize everything related to contacts in our app. Feature modules will consist mostly of declarations and possibly a provider, but they should never export anything. Their primary purpose is to organize business logic related to a specific feature. We generate the module with the Angular CLI, then copy everything related to contacts over to it. Notice we're also importing the common module. That gives us access to Angular's most common features such as ngIf and ngFor. Now we can go back to the root and delete everything related to contacts, then import the contact module and add it to the imports in the root. If we had 20 different components related to contacts, you can see how this would greatly improve the clutter in this file. Now let's look at a shared module, also called Widget Modules. They're almost identical to feature modules, except that they add all of their declarations to the exports as well, so they can be distributed to other modules. Common use cases include social media icons, loading spinners, and other UI elements similar to those. Let's generate the module from the CLI, then add the social icons component to both the declarations and the exports. From there, we can go ahead and import it in both the root module as well as the feature module we created in the previous step. Now the social icons component will be available everywhere in the app. The last type we'll look at is a core or service module. It has no declarations and only focuses on services for dependency injection. Common providers to include here would be an auth service or a toast message service, anything that provides data globally throughout the app. In this example, we're extracting our auth service into the core module. We generate it with the CLI, then copy over the auth service to its new home. We can also remove the common module since we're only dealing with services here. Back in the root, we can go ahead and import the core module and add it to the imports with the others. If we look over our app module now, we can see it's a lot more organized. We just have the one declaration, no providers, the one bootstrap component, and just a handful of modules to manage. That covers the main patterns you'll see with NgModule and Angular applications. In an upcoming video, I'll show you how to use the router along with NgModules to lazy load components. That's it for this episode. If you found the video helpful, please like and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, consider becoming a pro subscriber at angularfirebase.com. For just a few bucks a month, you'll get access to exclusive content as well as free one-on-one project consulting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.